So number one I want to talk about is that God is not a genie. So just because you pray for like $1 million, that's not just going to show up in your bank account. And a lot of people think they can just call on God when they need prayers, but after they're done praying, they can just go and do whatever they want. But that's not biblical, guys. And sometimes he'll even let you go without. He'll sometimes even let you be in lack. So you realize that God is all you need, that you realize that God is your provider. So you learn the importance of living by faith and walking by faith and not by sight. Paul is a great example of a man that God taught to be content and be ready in season and out of season. Paul had a lot of bad things come his way. He suffered shipwreck, he was starving many times. But what God taught is that Paul's provision did not come from this world, but it came from God, and that it's important to be content with a lot and a little bit. And so just because your prayers aren't always answered does not mean that God doesn't love you. That does not mean that God isn't looking out for you. Kanye is a great example of a person that thought God was a genie and prayed to God for stuff, and because God didn't answer his stuff, he just went and walked away.
It is, but I have my issues with Jesus. There's a lot of stuff I went through that I prayed and I didn't see Jesus show up. So I had to put my experience in this world, my experience with my children, my experience with other people, my experience with my account, my experience with my brand, and my experience with the level of music that I was dealing with in my own hands.
And he stopped serving Jesus because he realized that, following Jesus ain't just praying to God and just having him answer you, but it requires walking by faith. It requires sacrifice. And sometimes it's not going to be easy. Number two, the importance of taking up your cross. Luke 9 verse 23 talks about how if we want to follow God, we need to take up our cross, deny our own will, deny the plans that we have for ourselves, and follow after God. And that means that we'll miss out on the things of the world. That doesn't mean that we're all going to be millionaires. That means that sometimes we're going to be lacking in this world. And Jesus even said in John 16 verse 33 that we're going to have many trials in this world, but we should be of good courage because God is with us in these trials, that God is with us in the easy parts of life and the hard parts of life also. But in Matthew 19 verse 29, it says we can rejoice because if we give up house and father and mother and all these things to follow after Jesus, that if we give up all this stuff, that it's not going in vain, that God will give us way more in eternity in heaven. We'll have so many heavenly riches. I've been in seasons where God has blessed me and taken care of me, where God's blessed me financially, where God's helped me financially, but I've also been in seasons where it required me to take up my cross. I've also been in seasons where God told me to quit that job, where God told me to take a step of faith, and that was not easy. But I'll tell you what, when it seems like you're sacrificing and it's so tough, just know God sees your sacrifice. Number three, the importance of forgiveness. So Jesus teaches us that we are called to be the example to everyone. We are representing Christ. And so because we are representing Christ, we need to forgive people. We need to walk in love. And it can be so hard at times. It can be so hard to follow Christ. But people will know that we're following Christ and we're true disciples of Jesus if we're walking in love, if we're walking in the Spirit. And even when they break your heart, even when people hurt your feelings, we have to forgive. We have to forgive them and love our neighbor as ourselves. Because Jesus said if we don't forgive, that we cannot be forgiven. Jesus is the biggest example of forgiveness and walking in love. When Jesus was up on the cross and getting ready to die, when they beat him, put him up on the cross, and they started dividing his garments, Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." And I bet you that was not easy. The same people that beat you, the same people that put nails through your hands, he's saying, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do, Father." But Jesus calls us to love like that. Jesus calls us to live like he did and to be examples like he was the example for us. And it's not easy, but that's the importance of forgiveness. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you. These are 3 things that's really changed my life, things that God taught me the hard way. I got videos like this popping up. You can subscribe right here, and if you feel led to give, I got links in the description. But I love you so much, and just stay blessed in the name of Jesus.